If you want to see more detailed images, videos, and the full article, check the link in the description. Israel's complex relationship with the West, particularly its intertwined ties with the United States and the European Union, is under intense scrutiny. While the U.S. provides crucial military support and diplomatic backing, Israel's economic fortunes are significantly more interwoven with Europe. A third of Israel's trade is conducted with the EU, a substantial portion of its academic research relies on EU funding, and Europe is the most popular travel destination for Israeli citizens. A Western diplomat succinctly summarized this reality: geography doesn't change, and not having any partners apart from the UAE in the region means Europe will always be the gateway. The US will always be 8,000 kilometers away. However, this close economic relationship hasn't translated into significant political leverage for Europe. Deep-seated divisions within the EU regarding Israeli policies have long hampered a unified response. Critics of Israel's settlement policies and its recent actions in Gaza have been consistently outvoted by a coalition of older member states like Germany and Austria, bound to Israel by historical ties, and newer members such as Hungary, sharing a similar ethno-nationalist perspective. This lack of consistent European pressure was directly addressed by Josep Borrell, the former EU policy chief. To have leverage implies that you are willing and able to use it. If you can live in an illegal settlement and still travel freely to Europe and export products to Europe, how do we expect them to take our condemnations seriously? The recent escalation in Gaza, coupled with the actions of Messianic settlers in the West Bank, has dramatically shifted public opinion and political calculations across the European Union. The stark reality of death and destruction in Gaza, coupled with the seemingly unchecked violence in the occupied territories, has forced a reassessment of the status quo. This shift is evidenced by the actions of several key European nations. France has considered unilaterally recognizing a Palestinian state, the UK has sanctioned 2 Israeli cabinet ministers, and the EU has imposed sanctions on extremist settlers. However, the most significant development is the EU's consideration of utilizing its economic leverage to influence Israeli policy. This potential shift is not a sudden impulse but a culmination of growing concerns. Last month, the Netherlands, traditionally a staunch ally of Israel, requested an urgent review of whether Israel's actions violate the human rights provisions of their free trade agreement. This request garnered unexpected support from 17 EU member states, highlighting a growing sense that Europe needs to demonstrate a tangible cost for ignoring its concerns. A report by the EU's Foreign Policy Service, obtained by The Guardian, uncovered indications of human rights violations. While this isn't the first such finding, similar conclusions were reached twice last year. The current context of intense domestic pressure within Europe lends the report a new urgency. The report will be presented to EU foreign ministers, with the potential for decisive action to follow. The former EU diplomat, Josep Borrell, eloquently captured the sentiment among many Europeans: the situation in Gaza keeps getting worse, and the vast majority of Europeans want to see more than just words. Even in Germany, 3 out of 4 people across the political spectrum are in favor of suspending arms sales. So the governments talk the talk, but are they ready to walk the walk? Being a community of values is the EU's greatest lever, but we are losing it with our inconsistency. The EU-Israel Association Agreement, the bedrock of their extensive relationship, cannot be suspended without a unanimous vote, a near impossibility at present. However, individual components of the agreement, such as specific trade benefits or research funding, can be paused with a qualified majority vote within the EU. Any sanctions would also require the approval of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who, while criticizing the war in Gaza and describing the targeting of civilians as abhorrent, has yet to endorse specific sanctions against Israel. Several European governments are actively exploring a range of potential measures, from limiting Israel's tariff-free access to European markets and cutting off Israeli universities from research funds to ending visa-free travel for Israeli tourists. The existing trade imbalance favors Europe, meaning that the EU could inflict considerable economic pain on Israel without suffering comparable losses. While Israel's advanced weapons and cyber intelligence are valuable commodities, its overall trade ranking within the EU is surprisingly low, placing it behind other Mediterranean nations like Morocco and Algeria. The hope among many European diplomats is that some of these measures might indirectly pressure the Israeli government by impacting its electorate. A halt to visa-free travel, for instance, would be profoundly unpopular in Israel and immediately felt by its citizens. A European official expressed a cautious optimism, noting, "Maybe there is a bit of hope that in combination with this initiative, it also seems like things are changing in Israeli society," citing growing demonstrations inside Israel against Palestinian civilian casualties. People don't want their country to be a pariah state. The unfolding situation underscores the complex and evolving dynamics between Israel and its European partners, a relationship characterized by deep economic ties but a persistent lack of effective political leverage for Europe, a dynamic now undergoing a significant re-evaluation amidst the tragic events in Gaza and the West Bank. The coming weeks and months will determine whether Europe's words will finally translate into meaningful action, testing the limits of its influence and reshaping the future of its relationship with Israel. The question remains whether Europe will finally exercise its considerable economic clout, and whether such action would be enough to bring about meaningful change in Israeli policies. The potential for a fundamental shift in the relationship is significant, but the path forward remains uncertain. The EU's response will be a defining moment, testing not only its resolve but its ability to reconcile its economic interests with its professed commitment to human rights and international law.